this here, Emotion in Life and Music, a New Science. So you see it's got both elements of science and emotion in it, and that's deliberate. So what I'd like to do is basically just ask you a simple common sense question. It's not a trick question, I promise. How many people would say music is obviously emotional? Okay, so pretty much everybody. I agree with you. Now, how many people can prove it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And how would you prove it?
By reacting to it.
Listen to it.
By showing them the emotional reactions evoked by music in not only me, but a lot of people.
Oh, wait, let's just take it.
By the veneration people give various performers of music.
The veneration to performers, okay.
Simple, because I said so.
Because I said so hooks up with a lot of answers in the history of music theory. So the two dominant views, and I'm talking about formal, proper theory, formal philosophy or theory of music. The two dominant views of the question today are what you could call formalism and what you could call associationalism. And usually associationalism is the main one, that people say, well, I know music is emotional because when I hear this song, every time I hear it, I remember my Aunt Mildred. And I love her so much. And this song just fills me with love every time I hear it. But then obviously somebody else will come back and say, but I don't even know your Aunt Mildred, and I listen to the song and I don't hear love, I hear something else. It's just your assertion, it's just your personal association, it's your private opinion. One particularly classic aphorism about this was, you may know that the Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, ba 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 ba,
Yeah.
famously is described as the hand of fate knocking at the door.
Right.
Well, there's a comedian, I can't remember who it was, but we can look it up, who said, the opening of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony is the sound of fate, or Kate, knocking at the door. The idea being, you have no way of proving that it's fate and not just a nice lady who happens to be at the door. How do you prove that? How do you establish that? So basically what develops out of that, or in contrast with that, this idea that this is just a bunch of subjective associations. You're not proving anything. It's just your personal opinion. So then you get a faction of thinkers who say, well, look, this idea of musical emotion has more or less been debunked. It's not something that you can really count on as a solid fact. It's more like an old wives' tale. And you may know, if you're familiar with music schools as they are today, and I've attended a lot of music schools and taught at a lot of music schools, and I see it universally, you cannot talk about feeling. It is verboten. It's not allowed, and it's because it's not considered legitimate. It's considered unprofessional, unscientific, irresponsible. If you play in your piano lesson with rubato, what you'll get oftentimes from your piano teacher is, we don't do that sort of thing.
That's what's wrong with it.
And so, is it really that surprising that the general public says, well, we'll keep the emotion and let go of all of you academics? So there's this real dilemma of how do you prove it? And you say, well, yes, it's self-evident. We know we feel what we feel. But then the fact is, in the history of thought on the subject of music, that viewpoint has been utterly defeated. And it's because no one could ever provide a solid answer to say, this is something rational, this is something you can prove, this is something you can measure, and it's valid. Now, let's look at the problems from a different angle. Compare what music does to our normal emotions. And this is also a heart of the way the problem arises. With normal emotions, you are interested in a woman and you ask her out and she says yes. Okay, you feel happy. It's pretty obvious why you feel happy about that. Somebody in your family dies and you feel grief. Okay, it's obvious. You ask yourself, okay, well, why do I feel so down? Well, it's only been 2 weeks since the funeral. You know, I'm still coping with this loss, and it's a real loss, right? So that's self-evident. But if you hear the Chopin funeral march, did that kill anybody? No. It makes you feel that solemn, solid grief, but it's not doing it by impacting anything outside of you in the world that you care about one way or another. So if if the nature of emotion is to express your value reactions, how on earth is it doing it?
I don't know that you can say that's true, because over the years you've built up, from hearing that at funerals and such, you've built up an association.
Right, well, so that's the association view, and then
So you can't say
The
it's
other
not
side-
being impacted from the outside world, because you have that built up association.
then the question is the music emotional first and then you form associations, or do you form associations and then the music becomes emotional? So music doesn't work the way normal emotions work. The associations seem to be nothing but a matter of opinion and completely variable from person to person. And here you've got a formal theory of music that has absolutely dominated the Western world for 200 years, which says music is pure form. It's just a play of sensations. It's like doing mental gymnastics. And this whole emotion idea is a very quaint association that common people have, which is a lot like folklore and other forms of nonsense. And nobody can answer that.
Yeah.
So the question is, what does music do? What is going on inside of us that makes us know that it's emotional? And my answer is basically to say, okay, well, let's look at, first of all, our ordinary emotions. And look at just the experience of what happens in your mind during that emotional state. Set aside what thing you're reacting to. The girl you like said yes, or the person in your family died. Set that aside. Set aside the physical symptoms, and just ask yourself what happens in your mind when you feel a feeling. And when I reflect on that, I can parse out three aspects. One is, there's the aspect of a depressed person has a mind that's dragging. And you can tell in the way that the person speaks and moves, right? It's, oh, I just don't want to do anything. You can count the number of words per minute, right? But, oh my God, I'm so excited, we're going out and it's going to be a great day. And you can count the number of words per minute. It's probably 4 or 5 times what I said a minute ago. The blink rate will accelerate. All of those factors are different. So there's something about emotional state which has to do with speed. That's not the whole explanation, but it's part of it. So what is another differentiating factor? You've got stronger feelings and weak feelings, right? So if you are relaxing in a garden, you would not say, boy, I feel violently serene, right? Serenity is a mild emotion. It's a gentle emotion. Whereas if you're angry and storm out of the room and slam the door, you would not say that that is a weak or gentle or a low-key kind of emotion. So you have the amount of energy that the emotion has. It's an intensity. So you got speed and intensity, and then comes what's obviously the biggest one of all, which is there's a certain tone to the emotion. So we know on a primitive level that there is the basic alternative of pleasure and pain. That you stub your toe, damages your toe, and you get a pain signal. But if you eat something delicious, nutritious food, it's a signal of the quality of the food. So that is a pleasure sensation. Now, emotions have, as everyone knows, positive or negative valence, right? You've got the dark category of emotions, anger, anxiety, anguish, these kinds of emotions will be in the dark category, and then you've got the ones that are in the brighter category, like serenity and joy and rapture. And so this is the third aspect of things, what I call affect. And if you put it all together, that's what I call the psychological signature of an emotion. It has 3 dimensions to it: intensity, speed, and affect. And that is a motion of the mind. It's a set of what's going on in your mind. And now we come back to the question of music. Well, what does music do? It produces the psychological signature of the emotion. It creates inside of you that set of characteristics which are distinctive to any particular emotion. And the signature of joy is the same between the feeling of joy in normal life, those 3 characteristics in the mind, and the joyous music. If you take an example like the Brahms lullaby, it's clearly a serene melody. It's in the category of warm, serene feeling. And it's not because it's called a lullaby, and it's not because we form associations. You could play heavy metal for your toddler, and they would not go to sleep. So there are natural facts going on here. So that Brahms lullaby is an expression of serenity. But if you think of another example, bum, 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 that minuet by Boccherini. So who would say that that is furious?
What was it?
Furious, raging, angry, stormy. Would anybody say it's anxious? Okay, now here's the question. Would you say it's serene?
Maybe.
Yes, see, I feel kind of. And this is where the analysis by psychological signature comes into play, because the psychological signature of that slightly up-tempo waltz is the same as serenity, only it's a little faster, a little more active, a little more energized. This is one of the emotions for which there's no single word. We don't have a name for that feeling, which is like serenity, but a little bit faster. So this is my basic new concept for a way of proving, validating, grasping, and analyzing the emotional content of music. And what you'll find in my book is the development of this idea into a whole system. All right, so I should wrap up here so we can hear from John.